Good morning to everyone. Greetings. It's a great pleasure to be with you. Before I start, I would like to thank the organizer for giving me the opportunity to visit you. I'm sorry I could not be there in person. We had a conflict of schedule, but I'll try to do my best, and in the end, I'll be more than happy to answer any questions. Thank you. Basically, what we're going to show you that we have the know-how today. We can remove the global energy poverty today. It's possible today to do. But what it will take on your part, that's what we'd like to share with you. Okay. So here is the outlines of my talk. We'll start with introduction. And since it's a year for celebration of light, we'll try to show you the correlation between light and energy. Then we'll talk about that how photovoltaics is emerging as a dominant source of electricity generation. Then we'll mention and show you the importance of local DC power. And then of course the question that are we ready? Do we have everything we need to know technically? And I'll show you that yes, we are ready. And the last part, which is the most important part, is that what do we need to do to make sure that this thing can happen in the real world? To give you my own background, I decided to do my PhD way back in 1973. And that was actually the year when ILM Barbo started. So I have almost 42 years of experience. And another interesting thing I would like to share with you that for the first 12 years of my life, I have not seen any electrical power in my life, So this is what I would like to see, that it's possible for us today to see that everyone has access to the electricity, and that's what we're going to try and talk in this presentation this morning. So here is the importance of light. As many of you may know, Vedas are the oldest book known to mankind. And there's a word called Surya, which means sun, which is the source of light, and it's for entire mankind. And in fact, the language is Sanskrit, which is written here. This is a hymn from Rigveda, and it simply means that sun has all the source, all the energy need, and it's all the source of all power for us, Okay. And this is something not new. The human beings have known for a long time. The question is that how do we convert? That's what we're talking about. So here we have about almost 7 billion people today, and we're going to have about 12 billion people almost by the end of the century. And the challenge for us is that how do we provide electricity to all these 12 billion people in 21st century, and almost in an equitable fashion. That's the key point. The key word I want to emphasize, that in an equitable fashion, So here is the challenge. The challenge for us is that we have 1.5 billion people who have no access to electricity at all. Then there are other 3 billion people who are using for cooking and other needs, which are very bad for the health, and you can see almost 4 million people dying every year. And also on the clean water issue, there are 800 million people who have no access to water. So even the water problem can be solved if we can provide electricity ultra cheap. We can have water from the ground. We can also have water from desalination. So even water problem can be solved if we provide a solution for electricity. Here is a very important slide to show you that our biggest problem is that globally every economy depends on oil prices. And this is a fundamental problem. So you can see we have shown you almost every incident, whether it's political or it's technical or economical, they all have one way or another way correlations with the oil prices. So we want to get away from the oil economy, and it should be based on clean energy economy. There is also a lot of myths, and one of the myths which is propagated that renewable energy in general and solar cells cannot survive without the subsidy. The fact is, we are paying almost $5.3 trillion per year on the for the subsidy of fossil fuel. Even for US, it's about 3.8% of our GDP. On the other hand, if we talk about renewable energy, which include everyone, including wind, biomass, solar, everything, then you're looking for only $100 billion now. So this is the kind of myth exists, Okay. And of course, the biggest problem which I see is that everything, whether you have the pollution problem, whether you have the carbon problem, global warming problem, all relates to the fossil fuel subsidies. So it's not doing any good to the world, it's just doing more harm. Here is the latest information on the photovoltaics, which is something I'm going to show you more and more, but it's very recent, and the title is simply, you can't stop solar PV, and we can survive with the subsidies, Okay. So the question is that if you have to cut down the subsidies, you cut for every source. You cannot do that for solar, you're going to cut the subsidies, and on the other hand, you do want to provide subsidies to other sources. So that's the fundamental difference. Then many people claim that nuclear is the solution. No, nuclear has no solution either economically or even for climate change. There are a number of, I have cited, you can go back to these links, read yourself. Even as early as 2007, I was in Jordan in a World Economic Forum, and I was one of the panelists, and I mentioned there that nuclear is not cost effective. And since that time, number of studies have come, and almost all over the world, it's not economical anymore. Then we come back to the potential of solar. So you can see we are getting about almost 20,000 terawatt year per year. The units are not in kilowatt hour, but in terawatt year. So if you want to convert into terawatt hour, then you just multiply this by 365. And again, you can see that we have so much solar energy incident on the earth. And every else, the right-hand side you have starting from natural gas, petroleum, uranium, coal, all these are in fixed amount, but you can see the size. Even wind is much smaller compared to solar, and all the other smaller ones, they are shown in here. But this has the potential to provide electricity to everybody. And this is where the question comes that yes, solar energy is free, but that conversion is not free. So this is what we're going to talk about, that what has happened in the last 40 years and where we are today, and it can be done. The good part about solar energy is, look at this graph plot everywhere. This is a global map. And what you will see that where people who have no access to electricity, they have plenty of sun. So it's kind of a democratic system that people who have nothing, they have plenty of sun. The other interesting thing is that 90% of the world population gets more than about 1100 kilowatt hour per meter square per day. And that is sufficient for providing electricity to everyone. This is an interesting observation that almost 98% of the world can get this much power. Then here is a slide which shows you that a lot of people are trying to help. United Nations, they have an agenda that by 2030 they will provide electricity to everybody. It has not really done, something has been done. I will not say that nothing has been done, but it's not enough. Even there are a lot of philanthropists, there are a lot of charitable organizations, government, they are trying to do, provide an LED to these people, but it's not enough. You need to provide them education, health care, and also you have to work on their employment needs. Only then you can transform the world, So this is where the difference comes, that you're not just looking provide them just light source, but beyond that. Now we come back to some of the technical issues, and just to show you that photovoltaics word came from photo, which is photon, and volt is voltage. So light is going to generate voltage. That's how the word photovoltaic came in. This is a very important slide here, and I want to stress on three things. At a source, fuel should be free. That's where we're fortunate that solar energy is free. The second important point, that the materials which we want to use, they should be in abundance. So you don't have the issue of supply chain from the manufacturing point of view. This is where silicon solar cells start with sand, and we have plenty of sand. The third part is very important. I'm going to come back again on this point. Responsible capitalism. So that means the policies we have, whether they are for energy policies all over the world, they should be more for the masses and not just to serve the interest of few one. So this is where we have to really look at the public policies all over the world, whether it deals with the United Nations or it's to an individual government or a local city. It's very important to have policies which are going to serve the interest of the public at large. This is what we have done in the last 40 years. When I was a student, the cost of solar cells used to be about $77 per watt. Here today, this number is shown here, but today we can go back as low as almost like 50 cents. So you can see in 40 years we have reduced the cost by almost 2 orders of magnitude or 100 times less than what it used to 40 years back. This is a very important slide. You can see on the left hand side that all nuclear, coal, gas, either the cost has been flat or the cost is increasing. But look at the electricity generated by PV, it's just falling. So the right hand side graph shows you the volume, that how much PV is increasing. Just to give you a reference, by the end of year 2012, we had 100 gigawatt installed all over the world. By 2014, that number became about 180 gigawatt. This year we expect another 50 gigawatt to be installed all over the world. So the curve is basically an exponential growth which we are seeing, and the blue color on the right hand side is basically actual electricity which we have, and there is a crossover by around 2025. It may not happen exactly that way, but it just shows you that growth. This is the highest growth we have in energy sector. No other sector is growing faster than photovoltaics electricity. Again, coming back on the cost issue, here are the data shown that even in the next 3 years we will have another 25% cost reduction. And number of technical regions are there, they are listed on the graph, you can see. But basically here is the advantage that without inventing anything new, always there will be incremental innovation, but that's not a fundamental change. We can have a tremendous improvement in the cost reduction. And this graph again shows you that we'll be adding almost another 55 gigawatt this year. And it shows you the history that which region dominated initially. The Japanese and the Germans did fabulous job in the beginning, and that brought the cost lower, where we are heading towards that way. But the interesting part is that this is the prediction that by 2020, which is not too far away from here, we're looking just for another 5 years, 50% of the new electricity will be coming from PV. So you can see, we're not talking about the base. The base is great because you have so many other techniques working, but we're talking about the new electricity. New electricity, 50% will be coming from PV. Another very important point about the photovoltaics is that this is the fastest deployment you can have. Once you have the money with you, you have the sources with you, planning, everything can be done in a more or less shortest time than whether you have the wind energy, even solar concentrations, geothermal, offshore, even onshore winds, anything it does not compete with. So solar PV in terms of the deployment is the fastest one. It will take the shortest time, and of course the growth is simply faster. No? Here is another interesting graph. And if you buy your photovoltaics modules today, the manufacturer will give you 25 years warranty. Now, since I have worked in the field for almost 40 years, so we had known it that these modules do survive past 40 years, past 30 years. We have seen those data. But very recently, this company, SunPower, which is a US company, they have come and openly mentioned that even after 40 years, you will have 99% of the module will have at least 70% of the power. And as a technical person, I can tell you, we have some work going on where it is shown that silicon is kind of a very fragile. So between two glass plates, you have silicon solar cells, and then we use some plastic material which is ethyl vinyl acetate, which protect the cells. If we replace EVA by silicon, the lifetime may be going to 50 years, So it's possible for us to see in future that solar cells will operate successfully for 50 years, For those who are technical people, I have just shown a very simple way. On the left hand side, first the top line, you can see we start with sand. We heat with carbon in a high temperature. We get metallurgical grade silicon. Then we do purification. Then we have crystal growth. And then after the crystal growth, we just cut these wafers. And on the very last one, it's a process solar cell. So it's a much simpler process as compared to computer chips, which are much more complicated. This is a much simpler process, For those who are technical people and they would like to know more, we have published several papers. I just listed some of the very recent ones from 2012, 13, 14, 15, which does show you that why silicon will continue to dominate. In fact, one paper we just published in July, where we have shown that the new material called perovskite solar cells have no future, but it will be all dominated by silicon solar cells. So this is very important, particularly for the investors who think that, well, silicon solar cells are only 22% efficient, something will be invented which will be no, that is not true. There's nothing in the pipeline. This has enough efficiency and it can change the world today. Another interesting thing I would like to mention that our work, both the second and the third reference, they were acknowledged by the UNESCO, and here is the link, you can go and check it yourself. Coming back on the cost issue, you might be wondering that what is responsible for cost reduction other than the innovation, whatever the technical solution we provide. Just by sheer increase in the volume, it has an impact on the cost because it controls supply chain. So what is happening here? We have a graph which shows that every time you have the cumulative production, means you combining everything produced till today. And if you double it next year, then your solar module cost will be reduced by 24.3%. Here is an interesting observation. The lithium-ion batteries, which are driven by electric vehicle, will come back on this point, are also following the same path, and the cost is reduced by almost 22%. So this is a very powerful graph and shows you the power of the volume manufacturing. Why it is very important for us to switch to volume manufacturing for the masses at large we are talking about, because that's the only way you can reduce the cost. Okay. There is a report, the PV cost has already gone down to the point that in US there are about 50 major cities, and about 42 cities, the cost of PV electricity is much lower than what the utility is using, whether it's coming from coal, nuclear, gas, whatever other source they are using, but it's much cheaper, So overall what we are seeing, there is a change happening, it's a trend setting up, and basically what is happening that in US, for example, 70% of the new generating capacity is coming from renewables. And of course, distributed photovoltaics they did not even consider. Also very important point, particularly for those folks who claim that nuclear is the solution, you can see this is an average number between 1997 and 2014, that nuclear produced only 147 terawatt hour globally. And just solar and wind produce 879 terawatt hours. So you can see that the trend is more towards more solar, more wind. But there is no competition between wind and solar. But I think solar had many advantages over wind. This was in 2010, I was given an award and I mentioned that time, so it's in black and white, I can provide you information. Eventually there will be more solar and less wind, but they complement each other. One work during the night, another work during the day, so there is no competition between the two. So here is the driving force, that what is driving the field of PV. You can see from the top one, you have an exponential growth. Basically, in 21 years, it will be 128 times. Basically, because you have plenty of sun, both the PV and the batteries are disruptive. So the world will change as far as the power generation, electricity generation is concerned. You can distribute it locally everywhere. The fuel does not cost you anything, so it's pretty democratic, and it's almost everyone can use. I showed you those data that 98% of the people have enough sun, and we can provide electricity to everybody by solar. So here is a fundamental issue. If we run our transportation based on internal combustion engine, so only at the most it's 30%, in reality it is about 20-25%, but theoretically you can go to 30%. On the other hand, electric vehicle can be 80%, and this is a thermodynamical issue. Basically, if the same amount of what you want to do, then you will need 1 unit of electrical power, but you need 3 units of thermal power. So this is how the difference is coming. 30-80 is almost close to a factor of 3. So it's a thermodynamically, this is how the electric power is far superior than thermal energy. We just recently published a paper last year, and basically showing that you can take a small range vehicle which don't need to go too far, and just putting solar cells on the roof, you can drive anywhere from 25 km to 60 km. The cost will be much lower than anything you will be using, either in natural gas or petroleum, anything. The cost will be much lower compared to what you will be getting from fossil fuel, Okay. So I think these are the trends which are emerging in this century as far as the electricity production is concerned. Here in the top is UBS. Their statement that solar will become default power source. You have no other choice. Second important point is that this is the International Energy Agency, and what they are saying that as far as the goals of climate change are concerned, only PV is meeting all those goals when you take different sources of power generation. Even in United States, we have a utility which is owned by the citizens, so it's not a publicly traded utility, and the cost of electricity is as low as 3.87 penny per kilowatt hour. This is very recent, July 10, 2015. We published an article last year in 2014, June 2014, and we have a statement you can go and read yourself that in about 8 to 10 years, the cost of PV and battery generated electricity will be 2 penny per kilowatt hour. That's our prediction in next 7 to 9 years. So then the question comes, what else need to do? Once we have solar cells, then the next thing will be very important for us. It's basically, we have to use locally generated direct current power, not the alternating current power where you have the entire infrastructure. So this is also a very important point. And I think some of you who have the background in electric power, we go back to the history. Thomas Edison was the one who first invented the concept of electricity in 1882. And even this is 1931 quote where he said that we should be using not these sources of electricity generation, but we should be focused on either sun, wind, and tides. And of course, if he has to put his money, he's going to put on solar. So you can see how visionary the person was. He could see this way back almost 85 years back. That was his statement, you know. Even in transportation, he had his own automobile, which is DC powered, and it ran almost 1,000 miles, you know. Okay. So, knowing this importance of the DC power, last year in 2014 we published a paper, and we brought back all the key points. And basically what we were saying, that you need to use photovoltaics as the source of electric power, batteries for storage, and then two important factors are coming, that your distance between the source and the load should be minimum, and also you need to minimize your convergence. So minimum convergence. Then it's possible for us to have 30 to 50% more energy saving as compared to what we are using today, so-called AC grid. So AC grid is not the solution, but we should use this local DC power. And if there are loads, later on we'll show you that all our loads are DC, but if there are AC loads, internally you can provide a built-in inverter. Rather than we have an approach that all our loads are DC, but we are providing them AC, and then we are converting back to the DC. So even this year in June, I organized first international conference on DC microgrid. If anybody need any help, I have access to the proceedings and we can help you and send you any details. Now, very important for me to stress here that we're not talking about high voltage DC, we're talking about low voltage DC. So high voltage DC already has about 2% of electricity infrastructure. It's all based on high voltage DC. And high voltage DC has all advantage over high voltage AC. Okay, but since the system exists, nobody is changing. But if you have to compare it between AC and DC, even for high voltage, you have advantage. Now, we're not interested in high voltage DC, particularly for this application which we're talking about, but we are interested in low voltage, which will be always less than about 1500 volt. The reason for this one is that we don't want to get involved into transmission cost. So here is an example, typically some project in the United States, but the total cost of the project is $8 billion, and you're producing wind in some area, and the end user is far, far away, almost about 525 miles away. So out of that 8 billion, almost 33% you are investing, 1/3 on transmission cost. What it translates to, you're going to spend every month 2 penny per kilowatt hour additional because of the transmission cost. So if you multiply that by 12, that makes 24 cents. Multiply by 30 years, you're looking for $7.20 per kilowatt hour, just the cost you have paid because of the transmission. Again, we don't want to use the word local, means it has to be on your roof. It's possible for us, you can go 1 kilometer away 2 kilometers away. Here are some data, 380 volts, and the power loss was only 5% when we went about 1.5 kilometers. The wire thickness is also given here. So this is how the concept of local power is. It does not have to be on your roof. You can still go slightly couple of kilometers left or right, any directions, So to restate, you don't want to do conversions, AC to DC, DC to AC, DC to DC. Every time you'll be losing money, because you have lost about 5 to 10% of energy. Each conversion will be costing you the minimum 5 to 10%. Then of course you have loss in resistance. Any longer wire will have more resistance compared to the shorter wire. The another interesting thing is that the batteries store DC power. So if you're running on AC, every time going to convert, and that conversion is going to cost you again another 5 to 10% loss. So even from battery, of course the battery capital cost will be also issue. You will have more expensive power electronics when you're using for AC application as compared to the DC. Bottom line from this graph is that every equipment we use, particularly in the household, all appliances run on DC. So internally you have a device called variable frequency device, and all you take AC, then convert back to DC, and then it's converted back again to AC. So there is no logic for us when we are talking about these underprivileged people. We need not to use AC anywhere. All equipment, everything should be based on DC, not on AC. We have an example of a project coming up in California, just funded by the California Energy Commission, and by 2018 they will be completing this whole project, and we'll have the results. So this will be the first DC microgrid which is 100% working on the DC. So coming back again on this issue, the diagram here is way back from Edison time, from some state fair he used to go and show that how bad is AC. And so the message back again, we don't need AC. All our loads are AC, our loads are DC. The power coming from solar cells are DC, batteries are DC. We don't need AC anywhere. No. So this is the message I want to communicate back again from here, that we just don't need the AC power. It all should be DC. Now coming back on the batteries, the same aspect which we shown again earlier to you on the cost issue, volume manufacturing is playing a bigger part. So you can see here there are two graphs. The lower one is from the Tesla, which is our electric vehicle manufacturing in the United States, and they have done a fabulous job. They're putting battery manufacturing plant which are inside as big as gigawatt. In fact, the numbers are such that the output of this plant when it's completed will be almost same as many batteries we are producing on this entire earth today. So this is another high growth area where batteries are coming into picture. And of course, we plotted from other sources also, and the trend are that how the battery cost is reducing. It's not just from one company, but from a number of companies, number of data points are there. The trend is that battery cost is just reducing. Many people have the misconception that battery cost is high, which is not true. It's just going to reduce and further reduce. So our prediction is that it's not too far away where the cost will be less than $100 per kilowatt hour. And of course the driver will be volume manufacturing, and you're going to use power electronics for DC. That will also further reduce the cost. So ultimately the cost of the battery is going to be much lower compared to what you pay for hydro. Hydro storage costs anywhere from $65 to $75 per kilowatt hour, and we can do much better than that when fully everything is functional. So let me come back and look at the bigger picture. This is something I wrote in for an article in SPI magazine last year. And what we see that the electric grid is being transformed. So that transformation is happening. That's where we have to jump on the bandwagon for the underprivileged people. That transformation, the best solution we should provide for these people, which is going to be cost effective. Another one which somebody wrote an article on what I gave the talk in Bangladesh, and basically what it is saying that, hey, we don't need this electricity infrastructure which you have in existence for all these people all over the world. We need a very simplified structure. That's what we're talking about here. So this is how I see the evolution. The bottom graph here, which deals with the integrated grid, already we have every direction is being transformed into microgrid. They may not be based on DC, many of them are on AC, but they are being cut down from the regular total integrated grid to a single microgrid. Then these microgrid can be connected to each other. You can cut them off or you can connect them up just with a flip of a switch. Even further, you can break a microgrid into simply nanogrid. Now a nanogrid will be an entity which is operating independently and there is no connection with the follow-up nanogrid, which may be 1 kilometer away, but there is no connectivity between the two. You have your own power source, you have your own storage, intelligent loads, everything contained within that unit. These are the most reliable, secure nanogrid will be there, and of course they have to be powered by PV, batteries for storage, and they all have to be operated on DC. This is the solution we are suggesting, we are providing to transform the world for underprivileged people. Here is an example. The left hand side is World War I, which is 2001, almost 1914, 100 years back, which is 1914. And you can see you are using your muscle power to charge your battery. But look at the right hand side, you have solar panels there, any remote location, and of course you have personal power wherever you want to carry, you can just carry it with you. So this is the message I want to give, that the world is moving in a direction pretty much same way what we did for the telecom industry. There's no copper wire, there's no long range telephone line, you just have cell phone. Similarly, what is happening here, you have sun everywhere, and you just put your solar panels, you generate your power, whatever you need. This is what the parallel example I'm giving you, the telecom industry, same thing is happening and will continue to happen in a big way. So coming back on the issue of DC power is going to solve problem for all sectors, not only residential, commercial, industrial, transportation, even defense sector, everybody will benefit from the DC power. Now we'll come back to the main theme of our talk. And that's the question is that how do we empower these underprivileged people all over the world? How do we provide them the power? So that's the question we have to answer. So basically, we live in a world where about 80 people, the number may be less now actually. I have not checked the most recent number, it could be less than 80. They hold same amount of wealth as much as was half 3.6 billion people have. So this is the reason is that in this kind of thinking where 80 people can hold the wealth, everything is controlled by these people. So they feel pity for the underprivileged people, and every solution, every approach is driven by that approach, and it has failed. Because they just feel pity and whatever they can do, they try to do for them. So this is the reason that why we have not been able to solve the problem. My approach is treat these underprivileged people as future generation of middle class customers and invest resources. And they will provide you the global growth. We know globally in many parts of the world there is no growth, but here you have human beings sitting there and you're not using that human resource. So it's a capital sitting there, but it is in the form of human resource. We have to invest resources in those human beings, and that resource will convert into global economic growth. That's the key message I want to give. It's different than most of the talks you have seen on this topic. They will be giving a solution in some different fashion. No, my approach is totally different. Same time, you have to look at it, do we have a technical solution? The answer is yes. Photovoltaics, DC power, electric vehicle, batteries, microgrid, nanogrid, these are all your drivers for bringing the revolution. I'm talking about a revolution, we're not talking about incremental gain. So here is an example of just off-grid PV. This is nothing to do with the kind of main grid, so you have your load which is good to your house, and you have the photovoltaic module, in between you have the battery pack, and you have some electronics. So this is where the box in the middle, it can be very simple, it can be made very complex. Like for example, if I have to do the same thing for economies like ours in the United States, we have to worry about cyber security, which may not be a big concern, so we can simplify things. That's where costs can be cut down tremendously for these people, you can simplify. That's the kind of work we are doing ourselves, that how do we cut down the cost of these folks and we provide them cheaper electricity. Here is a scenario of the DC based nanogrid, and you can see that these houses they're all interconnected with each other electronically. Also you can have a solar farm also if you need that much power. and back and forth you can change power with each other. This is just in a small location. It could be 100 houses, it could be 50 houses, it could be 200 houses, but it does not have to spread miles and miles. It can confine to a local area. So with this approach, what we can do, we first start to make sure that we provide electricity to everybody and we have enough power, and we can start with low voltage, which is 48 volt DC. So rather than everything you want to provide in one step, you want to make it a two-step process. You use 48 volt DC, and that 48 volt DC will provide your basic needs from each household, whatever you have. Then in the second stage, we can come back and extend these villages, the rural area, people who have no access to electricity. Now we can expand to hospitals, industries, much more larger needs can be fulfilled in the second stage. Of course, the residential needs will be still 48 volt, but you can also go to 380 volt DC, and that's where you can use hospitals, industry, every other entity can come into picture. So what do we need to do? What is our requirement? One, we have to go to massive, large-scale manufacturing in a single location. So you can see the 4 blocks. I have the top block and the 3 in the orange color. They all relate to manufacturing. So manufacturing of every component, modules itself, batteries, everything has to be large-scale in a single location. Then you need 2 more important things. One of them, that we need to innovate the business model. I told you about the issue of middleman. We need to take out the middleman. So that's where innovation in business model is needed. Then second important point about the financing. So this is where manufacturing needs financing, and that financing needs innovation. So it's not the technical solution, but we need financial innovation. And I think I'm coming back to this slide second time. That's where the question comes of responsible capitalism. So responsible capitalism means we got to work together. And one of the requirements, which is very important, is quantitative easing. If we can print money for the rich people all over the world, including for United States, European Union, Japanese, why we cannot do for these people? That's an open question I ask everybody. We stress about the volume manufacturing, very important. Vertically integrated business model, which means you have no middleman. And of course, DC power, there is no room for AC power. So these were some of the points I conveyed last year when I was in Bangladesh. I gave a keynote talk, and these were the points I stressed. Now let me bring back again on the issue of quantitative easing. So you might think that I'm a crazy person and there is no such thing can be done for the underprivileged people. You read this article yourself. I have talked to Michael, one fine gentleman, absolutely his heart goes with these people, and he's suggesting the same thing. When we can print $3.7 trillion to save Europe, US and Japan, why we cannot do the same thing for the people all over the world, So it's an open question, and I think that's the fundamental change we are suggesting here as compared to any other solution. We need to bring new business model. There's no room for the middleman, okay? So even, for example, the donors are giving their money, and by the time it goes to the actual cost, the value of the dollar has been reduced by a factor of 10. So if you're spending 100 pennies, only 10 pennies are going for the right cause, the rest 90 are taken by the middleman. So here is the key for us. We need to innovate at a level that the middleman does not eat the pie and crumbs are left for the underprivileged people. It should be the other way around. You can spend 10% somewhere else, but the 90% should go to the right cause, So we have done our own number calculation, and of course the batteries have not gone to that point yet. They are going in the right direction. So the cost can be anywhere from $150 per kilowatt hour to $100 per kilowatt hour, $50 per kilowatt eventual cost will be. So you can see, of course, photovoltaics is ready today. You have that much cost, you can easily get 2 penny anywhere. So depending on whether we have the storage 50% of the power generated we are storing or 100% we are generating, we did some thumb rule calculation, and you can see that the total cost of the electricity can be anywhere from 2 penny to about 7-8 penny today. It can be done. The core requirement that you don't want those middlemen because that will increase the cost. So the diagram on the right hand shows that kind of vertically integrated business model. So for example, all these manufacturers, they don't have to take their own personal profit, but you can work together as an entity, and then you can still work about 7 to 8% return on investment. You're not looking for 30-40% return on your investment. So that's the kind of fundamental change we needed, and that's what I term responsible capitalism. You just cannot be greedy and looking for a lot of return on your investment. Here is an example from a real project, DC power, photovoltaics battery, nanogrid. This is in India, in a city which is, in a village which is about 14,200 feet above the sea level. And you can see for 1,000 years it has been a dark night. Every night has been dark night. You can see the top graph. But once the PV driven nanogrid came in, you can see the light in these houses. And of course, the good part will be that how happy this child can be. You can see from this picture right here, extremely happy this child. Okay. So I think our solution requires support from everybody. We need to have a summit. In my opinion, there should be a very urgently, we need to have a summit. And this summit should involve every party, whether it's World Bank, IMF, IFC, United Nations, foundation, private donors, all governments, non-profitable organizations, manufacturers, key player in financial world, WTO, everybody should be on the same table. And I think we should have some goals of this summit. So World Bank and others should provide free loan or very low rate loans for manufacturing, because that's where the cost issue will be. And the goal is that the cost of every product we make it will be far, far cheaper. The quality will be same as anywhere else, but here will be cost much lower compared to any other part being manufactured on the earth. The second important point is that we don't want any kind of trade war. So there should be no issue of duties or anything. Third important point is that people who we intend to benefit, they should be getting maximum jobs. Okay, so the job creation should be in those areas where we are targeting these people, And of course, all the foundation, governments, everybody have to join hands and make sure that we can provide electricity to everybody on this earth. So we need to work together as a single entity, cooperatively with each other. I think if we do this way, then from the day we start massive volume manufacturing, within 5 years, we can remove energy poverty from this earth. And what I shared with you is just the tip of the iceberg. In my opinion, this is nothing what I talked and shared with you. This is just tip of the iceberg. I'd like to thank you all. Really appreciate you for giving me the opportunity to talk. I'm open for questions. If you have no access to call me back, feel free to write me. I'll be more than happy to answer your question. Thank you again.